secretly assault women, but only the rule of law is stopping them from doing so. I remember that. Do you remember it? Do you remember when Dennis Prager said that? I do. I remember. I've got a good memory.
Some just as Destiny, known to some as Steven, online streamer, gamer, political commentator.
I know him as Steven.
It's really great to have both of you on. And
Is it? Is it really all that great to have both of them on? Oh, wait. I don't have Steven or Dennis on. Now I do. I fixed the situation. Nobody told me. That means that I don't have an actively viewing audience. It was a test. It was a test for all of you. It was a test of character, as Brianna would say. It was a test of character, and you have failed. You all have failed the test of character. It's okay. I forgive you. I'm a very forgiving person at the end of the day. I try to be. Okay, let's do this in a moment when the chat actually... Test of character, I'm an NPC. Even NPCs have a pre-written character. And that pre-written character can be tested and you can fail that test. Why doesn't the... Oh, whatever. Whatever. There we go. He absolves us of our sins, such merciful, such grace. It's true.
We've been working on this for a little bit, so many things have transpired since we kind of decided we were going to do this. So just to start...
What has transpired? I will roll a new character and try again. That is the best way. What has transpired?
Somewhere and get
What is this gun?
State of American politics right now. We had this assassination attempt against the former president, which
we have,
as I say, I am really glad did not succeed because I want to defeat people with votes rather than bullets. That being said, Stephen, you've been criticized because you said you did not feel, and I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth,
I'm putting words in his mouth.
Sympathy for what happened to Donald Trump. In part because when the victims have been on the left...
Whole or in part. Get it? I did a little bit of a joke. I did a little bit of a reference. Did you get it?
Left, you do not feel that there has been sympathy equivalent to that from the right. Can you tell me if I'm correct in characterizing what you said and maybe tell us what you feel now?
Yeah, I think that conservatives, especially under Donald Trump, have been responsible for increasing the hostility and the political divisions in this country in an unprecedented way.
I don't think it's just under Trump. I think it's been going on well before Trump, but whatever. Maybe I'm just misguided. But I know I'm right. Dennis Prager has been doing his Dennis Prager-y stuff well before Trump, actually. So, you know. I'm not sure if it can be characterized as just under Trump, you know? So there we have it.
For the past 8 years, I don't think that's just a byproduct of what Trump does. I think that's explicitly and specifically why people like Donald Trump. It's because he bullies people. He calls people names. He's, you know, and he's boisterous. He's loud. He's angry. He represents what you really, he says what you want.
Wait, hold on. I bully people. I call people names. I'm very loud and stuff. And yet I'm not popular. What's happening? What's wrong? Why am I not popular if I'm all those things? That's something's afoot. Something's wrong with today's society.
Here. So if that side is going to engage in that on the rhetorical level, And then on the policy level, if you've got people who, attempt to coup the government, lead an insurrection on January 6th in order to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power, when violent things start happening, it's very hard to look at that side and go, my God, I feel so horrible that these things are happening, because this is like exactly where your rhetoric leads. Like, where else would it go to but this?
What do you think, Dennis?
Oh, Dennis Prager. I eagerly, that's a false assessment. Lucy's not a bully. Well, we could actually play bully on stream, and I'll prove otherwise. You know, the game, the Rockstar game. I eagerly await Dennis Prager's response. I don't even read foul language half the time.
So it's interesting.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. That facial expression was so strangely amusing that we're gonna rewind and watch it again.
What do you think, Dennis?
What do you think, Dennis? I do not think. Don't accuse me of such silly business. I don't know. I'm so amused by this whole.
So it's interesting. In preparing for this, I got to know Stephen a little better, and I watched him and Ben Shapiro for about 10, 15 minutes. It was excellent.
You don't really get to know a person better by watching their internet stuff, but I don't know. I think you get to know people better by interacting with them, actually, not just by watching their content online. But maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm old school like that.
And one of the things that I think you, Stephen, noted was the staggering, I remember you used the word brain, but I don't remember the other term, about the staggering difference between left and right. And it's definitely one arena where you and I would agree that you believe that the hate-filled rhetoric and divisive rhetoric of this country is largely due to Donald Trump rather than to the left, does offer what I always say and I have for 40 years on my radio show.
What? I don't think Trump was on people's lips for 40 years.
I prefer clarity to agreement. We have great clarity in that you believe that. I think it is beyond belief that you believe that. If it weren't for Donald Trump, there would be just as much divisiveness in this country. When you call virtually everybody who is conservative deplorable, when you
I mean, maybe when conservatives stop being deplorable, I will stop calling them that. Thank you. You don't want to be called deplorable. Just stop promoting deplorable things. You know, it's that simple. It's that simple.
When you arrest for the first time in American history the leading candidate of the opposition party and a former president, when you
Well, he's not been arrested. Trump's not been arrested. That's first of all. And if he doesn't want to be convicted, then maybe he just shouldn't commit crimes. But to my knowledge, Trump's not been arrested. Has there been a new has Trump been arrested? Hold on.
You former in American history, when you arrest for the first time in American history.
Has Donald Trump been arrested? Have I really been this out of the loop when I went to Ukraine? I'm sorry. If you're arrested and you never go to jail, then in my book, that's not really being arrested. He's been in jail. Oh. Does that even count? Listen. If you don't want to get arrested, don't do crime. That's my advice. Thank you. If you don't want to be arrested, then maybe you should not commit crimes. It's not that complicated. I would think that right wingers would understand it. That conservative law and order, exactly.
History, the leading candidate of the opposition party and a former president. When you paint the would-be president or a presidential candidate, as the New Republic, one of the leading left-wing magazines, does, as Hitler, and use the term regularly, when the inaugural address of Joe Biden, easily the most divisive president in American history, spoke of
Is Biden really easily the most divisive president in American history?
white supremacy as a threat to America.
I mean, it is a threat to America. What am I supposed to say to that? Are you saying it's not a threat to America?
And meaning, obviously, those who vote for Donald Trump. And then say Donald Trump is responsible. If Donald Trump had been assassinated, God forbid, and I would say God forbid about Joe Biden as well, there would be not one diminution in the divisive rhetoric coming from the left. If Ron DeSantis were the nominee, he would be called Hitler as well.
So, Dennis, to be clear, you're saying you just disagree. You agree with Stephen that there is a difference in terms of violent rhetoric and incitement to violence from left and right, but you believe it is the left that has been inciting the violence, not the right.
Overwhelmingly. Are we gonna see some examples, or is it just gonna end up in a slogan?
Stephen?
It's just a deeply unserious opinion. There's no way to factually engage with that. Donald Trump is
I mean, what can I say? I guess we're gonna be rooting for destiny in this one. That's all I can say, probably. I mean, so far I agree. It is a pretty unserious opinion, yeah. What more is there even to say? It looks like a like one of those cartoons, you're right.
literally known in the entire world as being the guy that makes fun of people. He literally is the guy that gives nicknames, divisive nicknames or derogatory nicknames to his political opponents. Sleepy Joe Biden, Crooked Hillary.
Crooked Hillary.
What did he say about
Laughing Kamala, which makes no sense. I'm sorry, that's the weakest one by far.
Ted Cruz's dad might have been the Zodiac? Like, he just has so many
What the hell? Zodiac.
out of pocket things that, and then it's
Cackling Kamala. Jesus.
another world. I don't know if like conservatives listening actually believe this, but when people say things like, oh yeah, Joe Biden is so unbelievably divisive. Really? Joe Biden, the guy that gets on stage and that we've seen like has trouble stringing together sentences. This is the insanely divisive president of fiery rhetoric. When he gets
Yes.
on stage and he's like, MAGA Americans. And when I say MAGA, I don't mean everybody. I just mean the ones that deny the election, right? This is the guy that's insanely divisive.
Yes. He's divisive precisely because he has trouble saying, yay, Lucy, my savior. Hello, Ty. Welcome to the stream. Welcome, welcome. I hope you have fun. I hope you enjoy yourself on this stream. Back from Ukraine stream.
But when Trump says things like, well, there was the Second Amendment, they're coming for that, and we can't do anything about it. Well, maybe the Second Amendment people, can, and everybody laughs. But when Joe Biden in a private meeting to donors says we need to put a bullseye on Donald Trump, like that's violent rhetoric. Give me a break. That's just
what about that, Dennis?
Opinion.
I mean, what?
True. So far, so good. So far, so good.
What you mentioned, the reference to white nationalism or white supremacy in Joe Biden's inauguration speech, but what else has Joe Biden done, in your view, to incite violence?
Oh, I didn't say he incited violence. I thought the issue was divisiveness. Who is more responsible for divisive? Also, Donald Trump is one man.
Donald Trump is one man. Biden is a legion of little spiders.
Calling people Sleepy Joe or Little Marco is not in the same moral ballpark as calling people Nazis and depicting your opponent, as New Republic in its last issue painted Donald Trump as Hitler. The staggering amount of lies. It's the whole left world. Donald Trump is one man. The whole left is filled with hate. The lie that Donald Trump said that there were fine people who were Nazis in Charlottesville. Even Snow.
A lie. It's documented, isn't it? Hold on, something got stuck in my teeth. How's it a lie? How is that a lie? It's documented. It's literally documented. How is that a lie? Oh, whatever. It's not that you can go back and check it, right? Wait, yeah, you can.
Snopes, which is left of center, in its fact checking said it was false that he ever said that the Nazis in Charlottesville were fine people. He wasn't referring to them. The New York Times continues that lie.
He said there were good people on both sides. That's what he said.
To today, Joe Biden said that's the reason he ran for president, because of that horrific statement.
It was a pretty bad statement, yeah.
The lying from the left and lying of smearing. This is not just Donald Trump. This is not just Joe Biden. The left.
Also, never mind. Like, it's not just Donald Trump either. It's the whole GOP. Don't forget that, Trump has a whole group of psychophants behind him. I mean, it was not Trump personally blocking aid for 6 months. It was Mike Johnson, wasn't it? It wasn't just Donald Trump. Huh? Was it? Am I mistaken? Once again? Trump is a small bean. You're just one little guy. True.
Smears. That's what they do. When I spoke at Arizona State University a year and a half ago,
They booed me. They booed me when I spoke. Those hateful leftists.
34 professors of the 42 at the college that I spoke to at Arizona State said people should not attend because I am a bigot and a...
Oh no, I've been criticized. The hateful left. So much for the tolerant left meme, unironically. Oh no, they've called me a bigot and told me that my lecture should not be attended.
And a homophobe and an Islamophobe and a racist and a this. That's all they do. I invited all of them onto my radio show.
That's all they do. Criticize me.
Any one of you 34, all 34 can come on my radio show. Not one accepted the invitation. Did one invite me into their classroom? Of course not. So constantly referring to...
Yeah, just once again, I would remind you that Dennis Prager said in the past that the only reason why men don't just repeatedly assault women sexually is because the rule of law sort of keeps them in check. But actually, all men want to do it nonstop. So, Is that really the man you want to invite to universities to give lectures?
To Donald Trump. Donald Trump is nothing compared to the whole world, from the New York Times to Joe Biden.
What is Donald Trump compared to the whole world?
The world of the left is a world filled with smearing hate.
All right.
Stephen, let me give you the last word on this before we move on.
True. Stephen, do something. Protect us.
Yeah, I mean, if Biden was invited to speak about a particular BLM riot and Biden would have ever uttered the words Antifa, stand back and stand by, like Donald Trump said, for Proud Boys stand back and stand by, I think that the conservative sphere of media would have erupted in anger. If you want to talk about like who's more divisive or not, you just need look no further than the legislation passed in Congress. You know, President Trump ran for how long on repeal and replace the ACA? He wasn't able to replace it. He ran for how long on infrastructure? Biden was the one that passed that bill. Donald Trump didn't. And in terms of Donald Trump just being one man, Donald Trump is not just one man. Donald Trump is the entirety of the conservative party right now. And if you're a
True. As I've said, I said it first, which means that basically Stephen's in the past stealing my lines from the present. You're witnessing it in real time. Stephen from the past is stealing my talking points from the present and using them in the past. Because I'm that smart. Because I'm that good.
Conservative politician, or if you're in conservative media, you absolutely know that because you either toe his line or you are destroyed.
I want to talk a little bit about what's happening now with the presidential race, which has been upended by Joe Biden deciding that he is not going to seek re-election. Dennis, I know from listening to you that you are not likely someone who is going to vote for the current vice president to be the next president of the United States. I don't think that'll come as a shock to our audience. What I am curious about is, do you see her as simply an elected official running a campaign with whom you disagree, or do you believe that there is the sort of danger of a Kamala Harris presidency that some associate with another presidency for Donald Trump?
That danger. Okay, let's hear it.
I didn't get the part on the Donald Trump. Do I see her as a dangerous?
There is a view that Donald Trump represents a threat to democracy, and that's a phrase that we hear frequently.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So
I'm curious whether you see Kamala Harris simply as an elected official you disagree with, or do you feel that the word threat or danger applies?
Yeah, my position and my last column actually was on this subject. To me, it is completely irrelevant which leftist runs.
Really?
Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're all equally evil. He just said it in the opening, saying they're all equally evil. The entire world of the left is evil. Like this hive mind of evil. So it doesn't matter. Of course he'd say it doesn't matter who runs, if the evil that they represent is equal, right? There you go.
Gavin Newsom, it is completely irrelevant. They're utterly interchangeable. All leftists.
There you go. I called it. They're all equally evil, and therefore it doesn't matter. There you go. They're all interchangeable, like cogs in a machine, like Lego pieces. This is just all the same. It's all evil.
Everything they touch. This has been true from Lenin until the...
From Lenin! Oh my God! This has been true from Lenin, all the way back to Lenin, the famous US politician Lenin. The famous US left-wing politician. Has been true for all US politics history. Oh my goodness. Lenin.
The current leftists, wherever they are, not liberals. I have great respect for liberals. I think they're naive, but I have great respect.
I think liberals are naive children, but I respect them, and leftists are just plain evil. Evil, I tell you. Who are the liberals to him? Good question. He thinks the Democrats are the leftists, so I don't even know. They're like Lenin. It all started with Lenin. Actually, famously, the Democratic Party has started with Lenin. If you did your reading, you'd know. It's okay, you don't have to do the reading. You have Dennis Prager to educate you, so you actually don't need to do the reading. It's okay. It's fine. Dennis Prager will teach you.
For them. Liberalism and conservatism have a great deal in common. Liberalism has nothing in common with liberalism and conservatism have a great deal in common. Liberalism has nothing in common with leftism. Leftism hates liberalism. Leftism is illiberalism, anti-liberalism. So I don't care who the leftist is who runs, whether it's Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom.
Is Kamala Harris a leftist? Vote in the chat. Actually, I'm gonna start a new poll. Forget the game, boring one. We're starting a new poll now. We're starting up an exciting new poll. Is our new candidate a leftist? Yes. No. Kamala Harris a leftist? The liberalism is Trump's Christian nationalist circle. This is not just saying. Orban himself called his regime illiberal. Maybe, listen, Karasu, have you considered that maybe, just maybe, Viktor Orban is a leftist? Have you considered that possibility? You haven't, have you? I bet you have not considered that Viktor Orban might just be a leftist, just like Lenin. No, it's still open. The poll is still open. The poll should be still open.
Or somebody else. They are utterly interchangeable. Same with Joe Biden. It doesn't matter to me.
Kamala Harris is our new candidate, of course.
I listed in one of my columns 25 institutions that the left is destroying, from the universities to...
Yes, the left destroys everything that it touches. Wait, hold on. Isn't it the right that actually wants to abolish the Ministry of Education or something in the US? Isn't that like one of the programmed... Isn't that one of the postulates of the right wing? To do away with the Ministry of Education? And now the left is the group that's destroying universities? I thought that was a thing that I've heard that the Conservative Party wanted to do. Eliminate the, Ministry of Education. I wonder how this respond to this and himself spread that university is destroyed by the... I don't know. We'll see. We'll see in a moment. It's exciting. Oh yeah, Project 2025 wants to do away with Ministry of Education.
To the high schools, to the elementary schools, to the American Medical Association, which...
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. American high schools and primary schools are already in very bad state for many, many reasons. Like the funding of schools being tied to property tax and many other things. Like, I'm just gonna say that U.S. primary school and high school system is in dire need of reform. I'm just gonna put it out there. And university needs to be less, I don't know, cripply debt-inducing.
has announced that no birth certificate should list the sex of a child because we don't know what the sex is. The child will determine later. That's the American...
That's not what anybody says, by the way. Nobody says that. Nobody says that sex is what's the word?
Medical a child because we don't...
Oh, indeterminable. Indeterminable. Nobody says that sex is indeterminable. Okay, nobody says that ever. Nobody says ever that sex is indeterminable. You know the word. I'm not an English speaker first. Literally, Stephen Bunnell II. Hey, the GOP and Trump are a danger to our democracy and freedom. Dennis Prager. Oh yeah? Oh yeah, but have you considered that the woke mob and the trans people?
Don't know what
Have you
this
considered that? Have you considered trans people? Have you considered the sexes and the determining of the sexy?
sex is. The child will determine later. That's the American Medical Association.
No, nobody says that the child will determine the sex. Nobody. It's gender. It's gender. As far as I know, the discussion centers around gender and not sex. But I don't know.
Because the left has taken over the AMA. The left has taken over just about everything. And
That's totally not a conspiracy theory, by the way. The left has taken over everything. But then again, Destiny has onboarded some of it with the university, so...
destroyed everything, from the Boy Scouts to military recruitment, to music, to art, to architecture.
Military recruitment? How does military recruitment have been destroyed? I want to know that. Please elaborate, Dennis Prager. How has military recruitment... What? Okay, that's... All right. Military recruitment wrecked. Wrecked by the leftists. I want to hear more about that. That's interesting to me.
Leftism is a shark. It's a destruction machine. So
Okay, that's a
Okay, that's enough. Okay. Wrap it up. That's far enough.
lot, Dennis. Let's allow Stephen to weigh in on that and a couple
That was funny. Okay. That's time. That's you've said enough.
specific points that Dennis made there. One is that there's an interchangeability to who is the Democratic candidate. Number two, that leftism destroys everything it touches. And number three, he mentioned Leninism sort of in the same breath as modern Democrats. Do you
Leninism. The Democratic Party, the most Leninist party of them all. Oh my gosh. I did not expect this. I didn't expect this to be so entertaining. That is pretty funny. The Leninist party.
think that's an apt analogy?
I fully
completely. I fully agree that Leninism has infiltrated the entirety of the Democratic Party. And basically every, Democratic official, every Democratic Party member has a picture of Lenin in their office, in their bathroom, in their whatever. That's true, completely.
agree with Dennis that illiberal people are a danger to society. Right now, there's only one very popular illiberal candidate. That is easily Donald Trump. When you want to talk about people destroying democratic institutions, I would argue that probably one of the most important institutions that we have in the United States is the vote, is the idea, the concept of the peaceful transfer of power.
So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a jab and say that Destiny's not even gonna address his little the progressive dogma rules in universities, but I'm gonna forgive him this time.
Donald Trump in multiple ways, whether it was by encouraging people to lie and submit false electorate votes to Congress, whether it was through a multi-channel pressure against his vice president, of which Pence has come out and spoken plenty about, to get Pence to throw away the actual votes on January 6th, whether it was getting his attorney generals to write a letter to different states to lie about them having found voter fraud, whether it was Donald Trump lying to the American public, to Raffensperger, to people, to state legislatures in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, all of these things, all of these actions were taken to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power, which I think is probably one of the cornerstones of a liberal democracy, of a democratic republic, of a constitutional republic, where we are allowed to vote on a change in leadership and where that leadership is expected to back down or step down if they've lost the vote. So insofar as illiberalism is a huge threat in this country, I agree, but it is exclusively coming from the right right now. I don't think that the leftist candidates are leftist at all and that they're socialist or communist. Ironically,
I mean, true. What can I say? Leninism in the Democratic Party.
As Prager was complaining about calling everybody a Nazi, I know that Republicans have been in the business of calling everybody a communist for decades. I know because I grew up as a Republican and I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh talk about the commies every single day. So this idea that all of these candidates on the left are leftist, I don't think is true in any sense of the word. They're liberal. That's why the examples that Dennis gives of them destroying institutions are whether or not you list birth on a sex on a.
I mean, not really much to disagree on here. Even though he himself was saying that the progressive dogma is taking over universities, but that's,
birth certificate, whether or not you list the sex or the Boy Scouts or music or art or architecture. I think that threats to our democracy or the liberal order, I think, are far more evident when you look at the Republicans' attacks on our judicial system, on giving the executive branch, for instance, the power to have criminal immunity when the president takes certain acts. When you talk about trying to overthrow the election, I mean, like you can go on and on. Like the attacks on institutions from the right are far more damaging than any perceived attacks from the left.
I mean, it's pretty weak to respond. It's pretty weak to respond to, oh, there was an insurrection on January 6th with, oh, but, sex is not determined right away in the hospital and the kids are supposed to determine it on their own later.
What about that, Dennis? Because I hear Stephen arguing that there's been sort of a reshuffling here where the illiberalism or authoritarianism is, he argues, now coming from the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. Even if you don't like leftists, would you concede that he's right to some degree about the authoritarianism?
No, because Donald Trump was president.
No at all.
For 4 years. And we had far more freedom under Donald Trump than under Joe Biden.
How so?
Yeah, how so? That's a good question. How so? What?
Oh, we can give, okay.
Okay.
The number of mandates, for example, in the government and done by through the CDC and NIH, if you don't wear a mask, you're fired. If you don't get a vaccine,
you're fired.
You're fired. If you speak dissent at a college, you're fired.
Oh, Destiny talking point. How will I'm really curious now how Destiny will sort of tackle his own talking point being invoked directly. Now it's getting interesting. Now Destiny is being actually faced with his own talking point from the past. So we'll see. We'll see how this develops, huh? Listen, maybe, possibly, Destiny in this very debate is gonna end up using President Sunday's arguments that he was going to use against Destiny as his arguments against Dennis Prager. Wouldn't that be interesting? Would that not be an interesting turn of events if Destiny used President Sunday's arguments that were supposed to be against him, but he'll use it as his own arguments against Dennis Prager?
The whole culture of speaking to big tech and telling them what you consider misinformation from the government, as the Prime Minister of New Zealand infamously announced, if you don't hear it from the government, it is not true. That's a left-wing position.
What? It's since when? What? Since when is the left-wing position, if you don't hear it from the government, it's not true? Huh? What? Well, that's a new position I've never heard of. As a pretty left-wing person myself, I must admit I've never heard that position before.
All truth, and that's why I compare it to Leninism, which was my field. I studied Russian. I went to the Soviet Union a number of times.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
And he called the Soviet communist paper Pravda, means truth. Truth is what the left says truth is. For 2 years, they lied. The Columbia Journalism Review, published by a rather non-right-wing institution, the most sophisticated or prestigious journalism school in America, Columbia
I want to hear him pronounce Pravda again.
University, or published by a Raz Truth, called the Soviet communist paper Pravda, means truth. And my field, I for the communist paper Pravda, means truth.
Pravda. To Pravda.
Truth is what the left says truth is. For 2 years, they lied. The Columbia Journalism Review, published by a rather non-right-wing institution, the most sophisticated or
Prawdziwe.
prestigious journalism school in America, Columbia University, wrote a gigantic piece, a major piece on how much the New York Times and Washington Post lied about collusion between Trump and the Russian campaign.
Lied. All lies.
And if you differed with that, as you differ with anything, you were dismissed.
Wait, but you just said it's a left-wing thing, and you just said all leftists are the same. So are they all the same, or they're all not the same?
And you were misinformation, and the way in which they have taken over Google. But all of this,
who are they, and how have they taken over Google?
Is nothing compared to Donald Trump. But Donald Trump was president.
I'm pretty sure YouTube sort of elevates actually conservative content.
For 4 years. What did he do during those 4 years? Forget for the moment. I know you can't, because everything is based on January 6th. Right up till January.
Forget about the insurrection, please, for a moment, if you will. That's so funny. That is hilarious. Forget about this, direct attempt at undermining democracy. Just forget about it for a moment.
January 5th of 2021, what did Trump do in 4 years in power that compares to Biden's and the Democrats' suppression of freedom in this country?
Well, let's let Stephen answer. And I think, to be fair, Dennis, I'm just kind of an arbiter here. Some of the things you mentioned with regard to masks and vaccines, I believe they happened while Trump was president, not Joe Biden.
Uh-oh. I guess Dennis is just as senile as Trump. Uh-oh.
But I'll let Stephen, if he wants to address that. But to Dennis's question, up until January 5th, 2021, what was the illiberalism from Trump?
I would argue that the illiberalism from Trump was Trump's inability to work with Congress and trying to usurp as much power in the executive as possible to do things unilaterally as the executive without getting any kind of congressional approval or legislation from congressional, obviously. So like an example of this might be he was unable to bring Congress together to get anything done insofar as the border or immigration goes. So instead, he relies on his executive power during times of great emergency to send the military down to the border. That's a usurping of power by the executive to try to run immigration policy on the executive. I don't think that was a very good thing because he couldn't get Congress together to do it. I think that his undermining, even if we ignore January 6th itself, and I'll ignore the electorate for fraud and everything else that he did leading up to December 14th and beyond, all of the claims that Donald Trump made about how the vote is going to be rigged, mail-in ballots are going to be rigged. Notice that if you listen to his rhetoric, he never says, this is what we need to do to secure mail-in ballots. This is what we need to do to make sure that our election is safe. All he wanted to do is get rid of mail-in ballots because he knew that Democrats were more likely to vote that way than Republicans. He had no desire to make the election safe. He only wanted to make sure that the election was going to be won by him. When you talk about like big tech and you talk about trying to take away freedoms using big tech.
Who was that?
Well, when had no desire to make the election safe. He only wanted to make sure that the election was going to be won by him.
Who is this person? Audience, identify this person for me. Identify this person. Who is this? Write in the chat. Am I being betrayed? His son? Is it? Really? Destiny's son? Damn. A cameo. A family cameo. Alright. I see now.
You talk about like big tech and you talk about trying to take away freedoms using.
I see.
big tech. Well, we just had Twitter being purchased by Elon Musk, who is, if you watch any of his tweets, is clearly a right-wing supporter. All of his speech and all of his support.
Yeah, I know about the ban. I know about the ban. Oh, in the presence of destiny. Interesting.
Support goes to right-wing candidates or right-wing talking points. And if you talk about a threat to the freedom of tech, well, the biggest threat that was represented to tech was when conservatives wanted to bash Twitter and Facebook over the head with restricting their section or rescinding their Section 230 protections, which would have allowed you to sue essentially people that hosted other people's posts for things that those people posted. You want to talk about destroying big tech or censoring big tech, removing Section 230 protections would have been the number one way to do it. And then when you want to talk about like requests made by big tech, if you want to call those censorship, we got the
It's a good influence. I see.
full Twitter files leaks. And as much as Republicans try to rewrite the record, Taibbi himself said, when it comes to the New York Post story, for instance, there was not a single example. There was no evidence whatsoever of government intrusion into Twitter to ask them to remove that story. But you better believe when that one comedian lady said that Donald Trump was I think a pussy ass bitch, she tweeted, Donald Trump sent in a request to Twitter to have them remove that tweet because he didn't like it. So if you want to talk about like big tech censorship or attempts to do so, we can talk about Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. We can talk about the types of requests that Donald Trump sent into Twitter, as opposed to the Biden administration, who, when they sent in requests for specific tweets to be taken down, it was because they were of pictures of Hunter Biden. I'll just say that. Not even close to comparable. And yeah.
Interesting. What pictures were those? Tell us, Stephen. I don't know. I'm out of the loop. I don't know what pictures those were. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, when you talk about like authoritarian actions, I think that one of the largest authoritarian actions you can take is to try to usurp as much power for yourself as possible. And that might be done in terms of running things that should be done by Congress, like immigration policy, by using the military. That might be done in ways of like undermining an upcoming election and saying that the election is going to be fraudulent, or it might be done in ways of like avoiding ever being held responsible for things that you do for criminal activity, right? The Supreme Court's granted him criminal immunity. He wasn't impeached in the Senate because they said, oh, well, we can't impeach him. He's already out of office. And he pardoned almost every single person that worked with him. Why would he pardon people like Paul Manafort? That's so crazy. I understand why people might want to argue for pardons for maybe like Flynn or maybe Stone, but Paul Manafort, why? It was so crazy. You can look up how many pardons he's done on the presidential website. It's insane compared to any other president.
What do you think, Dennis? I mean, certainly it sounds like a lot of unilateral action for sure. Do you defend all of the things? Do you dispute that Trump did any of the things Stephen mentioned? And if you don't dispute it, do you defend it?
Yeah, he started to build a wall. That was I don't know whether it's in his province or not. I don't know what the law is, but it is true. He could not get Congress to agree because the Democrats, since Ted Kennedy.
True, the Leninists, you mean? Don't stop calling them the Democrats. They're the Leninists.
In the 1990s, have worked to open the border. You cannot have a civilization with an open border.
What? What do you mean you cannot have a civilization with an open border? Then how did all the civilizations before nation states exist? Are you saying before the advent of the nation state, civilizations did not exist? Dennis Prager? Did all civilizations start in the 19th century? The hell was that? The hell was that statement? You cannot have civilizations with open borders. What does that even mean? When the security of the borders as we understand them today started directly with nation states, that just makes no sense. Oh, I'm gonna hear that again.
That is a gift to open the border. You can.
This is just stupid.
Not have a civilization with an open border.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean? Is he saying that real life was like a Civ game? A literal Civ game? Well, it's not. Okay? It's not. Ugh. Gosh. I love Civ. True. Me too.
That is a given. I assume Stephen would agree with that open border and keeping a country intact are mutually exclusive. Can we?
Civilizations are not something that we value or not value. Civilization is just something that is. And civilization existing is not like dependent on border situations. Civilization exists. Civilizations or civilization exists in one way or the other, whether or not you have open borders, closed borders, or whatever borders. Okay, civilizations are border agnostic, if you will. I don't think Dennis Prager understands what civilization means. I'm not sure even if Dennis Prager understands what civilization means.
We agree on that?
Yeah,
No.
that's why nobody asks for an open border.
Oh, yes, the Democrats do. I mean, if you
No, I cannot agree with that. What does that mean? Civilizations cannot exist.
deny that, that's good. You'll be on record, Dennis, saying...
Well, define it as policy, Dennis, so we could agree.
This is really critical, really critical. Do you believe, Stephen, that the Democrats have been for a controlled border and not for an open border in the last 10 years?
I think the Democrats tried to pass comprehensive legislation that was written by Lankford, a Republican in the Senate. I think Donald Trump and the Republicans are the ones that killed that, and that was on public record.
Please
so
answer
no,
my question.
the Democrats have not been for open borders.
Do you believe the Democrats are for a closed border? Okay,
it's not just closed or open,
okay.
but
Can
nobody's
you define it though for us?
The border is a very complicated thing. Yeah.
Well, now it became a mess. Civilizations do exist. I'm just gonna say that.
You define what you mean.
It is very complicated.
It's not complicated.
Define
I'm sorry,
open
did you just
border.
throw that much information about immigration or the border?
Okay, good. All right. As I said, I prefer clarity to agreement.
Can you define open border, Dennis?
Yes, letting anybody who wants to come into this country come in. It's not complex.
And then to be clear, you think that that's the case right now?
That's the case right now. And that is the case what the Democrats want. That is correct.
So
They have sanctioned.
If anybody that wants to come in just can come in, then why is there such a thing as undocumented immigrant in the US? That's my question to Dennis Prager. Why isn't every single immigrant documented then? If anybody that wants to get in just can get in. If you have not undocumented immigrants, so-called illegal immigrants, by definition, that means that not everybody that wants to get in can get in. Right?
Sanctuary cities all over my state.
Excuse me, sanctuary city has nothing to do with immigration policy.
Oh, as sure as it does. If you are here illegally, we will not allow ICE or anyone else to take you away. You can come. That's what sanctuary city means.
That is not what a sanctuary city is. That's not what a sanctuary. Sure, I can tell you what it means. When it comes to enforcing immigration, that is a.
Damn. Yeah. So there's a historical lens. Yeah, it does not mean that they do not exist, right? There you go. You've defeated yourself with your own argument. Philosophy as a lens of viewing the world. Does that mean philosophy does not exist? There you go. I've defeated you. I've defeated you with this short and sweet debate. Chat debate. There you go. You've been defeated. Admit defeat.
Exclusively in the purview of the United States government. Now, it tends to be the case that if you're a state official, you can collect information about whether or not a person is here legally or not. And if you want, you can turn that information over to federal authorities like Immigrations and Customs Enforcement or like the Department of Homeland Security. You don't have an obligation to do so. And some cities explicitly say we won't. So a sanctuary city is just a city where if they arrest you, they're not going to do an immigration check. And if you fail, they're going to turn you over to the federal authorities. As somebody that is a conservative, who I imagine would have an appreciation for the concept of federalism, but the important protections of states' rights, because that's what we said when we threw abortion back to the states, you should champion a state deciding whether or not they would want to cooperate with a federal authority when it comes to turning somebody over for matters of deportation. But a sanctuary city does not legalize illegal immigration. It's just whether or not a city wants to cooperate with federal investigators when it comes to turning over an undocumented citizen.
Why is he speaking so fast? I'm already lost.
Or immigrant.
Fine. Okay.
Yes, I need more debates. You're white, Tyree. Why are you white? Don't be white.
We can continue.
Do you agree with that, Dennis? I mean, do you recognize that it's an issue of state?
The issue of people crossing a federal border is a federal issue. It is not just a state issue. Okay, it is so elementary. It's a national border. It's not just a state border.
And yet, wasn't there a state that sort of just ignored a federal, court order and decided we're just gonna screw it? And was it Texas or something? I don't know. There was something. There was a little bit of a tense moment between a state and a federal decision, but maybe I'm just wrong. Race is a scientific lens, a bad one. Yeah, but it doesn't sort of make... Oh, Barry! Thank you very much for the tier 1. Forgot to renew. Thank you. I mean, race is sort of not real, but it's also very real as far as it, as far as it affects people's lives. I'm not sure if I would call civilizations necessarily a bad lens. The term is often invoked in a really dishonest way, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad lens of analysis. Man, Prager was so out of his depth in this debate. It was pitiful. It is a bit, isn't it, Ali? Race is a social construct. True.
I'd be really careful with that, because that wasn't Abbott's argument when he wanted to enforce the border in Texas. He said that the Texas National Guard should be that.
There we go. I just said it once again. Destinies from the past stealing my arguments from the present. You see what's happening here in real time? Destiny is reaching out into the future from the past and stealing my arguments to use them in the past. Wow. This is so incredible.
Oh, you just used the Biden administration.
Because there's no federal oversight. Because the Democrats are happy to have a great number of people come in. They're potential Democratic voters in their view.
I think it's fair.
So, Dennis,
is there a single lawmaker or is there a single prominent Democrat that said we want open borders?
No.
Okay.
I see.
And so what are the open border policies, Dennis? If the sanctuary city you concede
is not relevant, but the answer is no. Okay, go ahead.
If you concede that the sanctuary...
Dennis looks nervous. Disney is a Time Lord? Yes. The answer is yes, always.
Cities themselves are not the border. What are the open border policies that are at issue that you would want Stephen to either defend or denounce?
No, we have to have only legal immigration. I don't know. The rendering of a simple concept complex is a way to avoid the moral issue, the political issue.
What is the moral issue? I mean, it is a moral issue, right? To sort of lock people into camps just because they want to go into a country. I guess that is a moral issue, but I'm not sure if Dennis Prager here would admit it. I remember it's Poland, not the US, but I think my point stands still. When I was driven to a border patrol sort of checkpoint, and the border patrol person told me, oh yeah, those camps for refugees, they're basically like prison. In all but name. You know?
The real issue is that under Democratic...
Dylan made a great observation about this. We have this guy saying Dems are for open borders, but they also call Obama the porter-in-chief, depending on how they want to dress up their argument. I mean, you know, it is what it is. Wait, hold on. The Democrats, don't you mean the Leninists? Don't you mean the Leninists? There are no Democrats in the U.S. There are only the Leninists, as we've learned today from Dennis Prager. The Porter-in-Chief. Was Obama really called that? The Porter-in-Chief. Is that really a thing? My bad. I meant the Leninists, Stalinists, and Trotskys. True. That is true. Listen, speaking, might as well remind everybody, since you've invoked Dylan Burns making a good observation, because I was in Kyiv recently, I was able to register and go to a live premiere, I want to say premiere, of his document, which I recommend. It's a very nice document, and I recommend it highly for when it debuts online. Okay. All right. The Porter-in-Chief. Okay, let's continue.
Influence since Ted Kennedy. This is not new, but it has been hastened under Joe Biden. The border has been essentially open to millions of people to come into this country illegally. And you can't even say illegal alien. You can't say alien.
I don't know why this is so funny to me. You can't even say illegal alien anymore. What is the world that we live in if you cannot even say illegal alien anymore? What has happened? What has happened? Where did we go wrong? Where did we go astray if we cannot even say illegal aliens? Where have we failed as a species? I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up right now. Does this guy do anything but cry? Oh. True. It's a good point. He did just say it. I don't know. I don't even know why I found this so funny. I guess I'm just immature.
And you can't say illegal.
I mean, but what do you mean it's being set up to let people illegally? This is so nonsensical.
You now say undocumented immigrant.
What the? What kind of an argument is that? I have to hear it. I will listen to it again. I'm not even sure what point is being made here. Is that one of those, we're replacing one language with a more woke language type of argument? What is the point being made here? What the hell is going on?
And you can't say illegal. And you can't even say...
Isn't undocumented basically the same as illegal? Sort of, kind of.
Illegal...
Oh, you send me some images? Daily Mail for right-wingers. Border Patrol keeps migrants in cages in South Sudan. Oh, open borders. I guess that's the... I guess let's take a look at the current open borders policy. But what is this argument? You can't even say illegal aliens anymore. Now you have to say undocumented immigrants. What? I cannot take this argument seriously. I just cannot. I just cannot take this seriously. Oh my god. Exclusive. Migrants kept in cages in 113 degrees in Arizona as border crossings surge again. I mean, listen, Karasu. Have you considered the fact that all these people have in fact crossed the border straight into the cages? Which means that they have gotten through the border, which means that the borders are by definition open. Have you how did they end up in the cages? By what? By crossing the border, which means the border is open. There you go. Checkmate, atheist. You haven't proven anything. It's not the dunk that you think it was. They still crossed. They still crossed the border. Jesus Christ. The U.S. Border Patrol is holding migrants in outdoor cage in the baking Arizona deserts. As officers try to cope with a fresh surge, people crossing from Mexico. By the way, the U.S. government has been incentivizing people to actually cross the border from Mexico legally because the U.S. really depends on those seasonal workers that are not completely documented and will accept a not complete pay, if you get my drift. So it's not exactly as, and it's not a left-wing government exclusive type of deal, just so you know. Just so we're clear. DailyMail.com pictures show people crammed onto narrow benches that they seek out shade to protect them from the burning sun in a region where temperatures are expected to hit 113 Fahrenheit at the weekend. Figures can be seen taking it in turns to stand in front of a giant fan at Ajo Border Patrol Station. The site is in the remote desert about 2 hours west of Tuscan. The area is at the heart of a surge in migrant arrivals, undermining Biden administration hopes that its new immigration restrictions are having an impact. And the increase marks a reversal of the normal pattern when arrivals tail off amid the extreme heat of the summer. Especially in Arizona and California, where most of the vegetable and fruit crops are grown, much of that has to be picked by hand, not by machine. Yeah, of course. And I'm pretty sure all the right-wingers that cry about immigration, that cry about open borders, quote unquote, are not against this practice of incentivizing people from Mexico to come and act as cheap labor. I'm pretty sure that there is no real meaningful opposition to that from those same people. Extraordinary images show migrants being held in outdoor cage. Amazing. Totally humane. Migrant advocacy groups condemned the practice of caging arrivals, but officials said they were forced to use outdoor facilities as they struggled to manage the surge. The richest country in the world, by the way. Richest country in the world. It is bad news for the Biden administration. The pictures of people held inside wire fences provide a visual echo of families caged under the Trump administration. Open borders, everybody. New Customs and Border Protection data reveal that July brought a jump in illegal crossings of more than 30%, reversing a decline since President Joe Biden overhauled immigration regulations. CBP recorded more than 130,000 arrests along border compared with 99.545 in June, according to a source close to Border Patrol. The spike is greatest in southern Arizona. In the region around Ajo, the Tuscan sector recorded 40,000 arrests last month, making it the highest monthly total in 15 years. The numbers were first reported by the Washington Post. That comes despite a record heat wave. The temperatures have been running at more than 105 Fahrenheit for days. I mean, of course it's a right-wing paper, but they don't mind talking about this because it's in the context of attacking the Biden administration. The key sentence here is, it's bad news for the Biden administration. You know, might as well tell the truth about how it is, as long as it attacks the Biden administration. Hello, Zoshilix. We're talking about the border. But they do admit it's not open border. I mean, it sometimes is an open border. It sometimes is not an open border. It depends on the context and the situation. It depends on the mood of the person speaking, you know? When it serves to attack the Biden administration, then the borders are not really open. But when it also serves to attack the Biden administration, it suddenly, or the broader left-wing movement, quote unquote, then it also becomes pretty, you know, useful to say that actually the borders are completely open. Worse is to come. There we go. All the photos are here. We get the drift. People are being caged in open air prisons. Cages. That's really the deal. Let's look at the children. Let me see. U.S. detention of child migrants. A young girl carries a child inside a U.S. Customs Border Protection holding area in El Paso, Texas. Yes, I have heard about Iran calling for revenge for killing the Hamas person. I've heard about that, yes. I'm not sure if we're gonna make it to talk about it today because today's stream is gonna be a bit short, but yes, I have in fact heard about it. Yeah. Yep. Tens of thousands of unaccompanied children have been arriving at the U.S.-Mexico border each year, sparking debate over how to respond. How is the Joe Biden administration handling it? Well, obviously by letting them all in because it's open border season. Summary. The United States continues to see a rise in apprehensions of unaccompanied migrant children, most from Central America along its southern border. Several laws and court cases guide how U.S. authorities treat migrant children while their asylum and immigration cases are under consideration. U.S. detention of migrant children has long sparked controversy. The Trump and Biden administrations have faced criticism for violating legal protections. Unfortunately, as sad as I am to say it, the problem of immigrants, the problem of refugees seems to be a pretty bipartisan topic on the left and the right. It seems to be a topic that um, even more left-wing governments, centrist governments, seem to have more in common with right-wing governments than one would expect. I speak in apprehensions of migrant children crossing the southern US border without a parent or guardian has overwhelmed the systems set up to care for them and reinvigorated debate over the detention of minors. President Donald Trump framed the influx of asylum seekers, both adults and minors, as a national security threat, and his administration implemented a suite of policies to deter migrants. Critics argued that this response exasperated Central America's humanitarian crisis, broke U.S. law, and violated international human rights norms. President Joe Biden promised to overhaul Trump's immigration policy, but has struggled to address growing migrant flows as socioeconomic conditions worsen across Latin America. The end of some pandemic-related border measures has challenged the Biden administration to seek new ways of handling children and families arriving at the southern U.S. border, with some critics condemning his restrictive asylum proposals. Interestingly enough, the new Polish government has also promised to sort of change things when it comes to the Polish-Belarusian border, but that has not come to pass. It's a really complicated issue with the Polish-Belarusian border as well. What's the current situation at the border? Border encounters of unaccompanied minors plunged in early 2020 amid the COVID-19 pandemic, but have since risen steadily. Immigration authorities encountered more than 152,000 unaccompanied minors at or near the US-Mexico border in fiscal year 2022. An all-time high, about 72% of all accompanied children in federal care were 15 years of age or older, though authorities have also detained infants and toddlers. Interesting. What is the definition of an unaccompanied minor? Under US law, unaccompanied alien children. I thought you were not supposed to be able to say that anymore. I thought you weren't able to say alien. I thought you could I thought you could only say undocumented immigrants. Are defined as migrants under 18 years old with no lawful status in the United States and who have no parent or legal guardian available to care for them. Despite the term's connotation, these children do not necessarily enter the country alone. Some arrive with friends or family members and are separated at the border. Others are brought by smugglers or fellow migrants on foot or by vehicle. Why are children arriving on their own? A lack of economic opportunity, environmental challenges, and chronic violence continue to drive people from Central America, with migrants from the so-called Northern Triangle countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, accounting for 3/4 of unaccompanied children apprehended at the southern U.S. border in fiscal year of 2022. Most others have historically come from Mexico, where the homicide rate is at near record levels amid a long-standing war against drug cartels. Perceptions that Biden is more welcoming than his predecessor have also driven migration, some observers say. Many children hope to reunite with relatives in the United States. Others have deliberately left their families behind, fleeing domestic abuse, poverty, criminal gangs, or corruption. Some migrant parents, often out of desperation, choose to send their children across the border alone to avail themselves of asylum protections for unaccompanied minors. What happens to detained children? Most unaccompanied children are detained at or near the southern U.S. border. Often turning themselves in to authorities. Their entry into the immigration system triggers a multi agency response that is guided by several laws and court settlements. Under the Homeland Security Act of 2002, the Departments of Homeland Security and Health and Human Services share responsibility for unaccompanied children. These agencies must uphold the 1997 Flores settlement, which was the result of a lawsuit against federal immigration authorities regarding the treatment of minors in detention. Flores outlines standards of care for both accompanied and unaccompanied minors, including access to food and water, emergency medical services, bathroom facilities, and ventilated, temperature controlled surroundings. Under a 2015 court decision related to Flores and the 2008 Wilberforce Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, which codified certain Flores protections, officials must aim to keep minors in detention for less than 1 month. Nonetheless, they can hold children longer than this during emergencies, including spikes in migrant arrivals. DHS is the first agency involved. Its responsibilities include apprehension, processing, and if necessary, the return of children to their countries of origin. Customs and Border Protection, a DHS agency, initially detains child border crossers, whom it has historically identified as unaccompanied children through interviews, documents, and medical testing. CBP separates minors on an ad hoc basis from adults it deems unrelated, dangerous, or criminally prosecutable, which results in the recategorizations of some accompanied children as unaccompanied. Another DHS agency, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, may apprehend minors already inside the United States. No, that's an interesting part, isn't it? At this point, DHS can repatriate Canadian and Mexican unaccompanied children who it determines are capable of making the decision to withdraw their request for entry, are not at risk of trafficking, and can safely return home. For others, the TVPRA gives CBP and ICE 3 days to transfer custody to HHS officials after identifying the minors as unaccompanied. HHS, which is responsible for unaccompanied children for the remainder of their time in federal custody, must place them in the least restrictive setting possible, which often means group homes, foster care, or other facilities equipped to provide long-term child care. HHS's Office of Refugees Resettlement distributes many minors in its care across a national network of more than 200 state licensed and federally funded independent facilities, which typically provide educational, social, health, and legal services. During emergencies, ORR houses children in unlicensed temporary influx shelters, though it aims to transfer them elsewhere within 90 days. What happens when a child arrives at the border? This is a whole graph. Arrival at the border. Children, many fleeing poverty and violence in the Northern Triangle, arrive at the U.S. southern border, either alone or with family or other migrants. In recent years, mirroring policies, the migrant protection protocols, and a public health order have been used to reject child migrants, though some children have been temporarily detained first. One moment. I'm gonna go to the toilet and we're gonna continue. Have to go to the toilet real bad. I'll be right back. I'll just edit this part out in the thing. Whoa, I'm back and I brought Oreo with me. How exciting. Ugh, how exciting is that? Oh, that's right. Yep. Open border. So, I know. I just went to the toilet real quick. So, the alternative to this quick rejection is children are apprehended by officials from the U.S. Border Patrol or the Office of Field Operations, both agencies of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and placed in CBP facilities. Temporary detention. CBP detains children in facilities while authorities determine whether they qualify as unaccompanied children. Some accompanied children are separated from adult guardians who are unrelated or deemed dangerous, or from family members facing prosecution. And then we have the other opportunity for rejection. Under US law, some unaccompanied children from Canada and Mexico can be deported immediately. Open borders. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE manages the transfer of unaccompanied children to the Department of Health and Human Services. Long-term custody while cases are heard. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, a department of HHS, can hold children in temporary influx facilities during emergencies, but is supposed to arrange long-term shelter as soon as possible. Children can be placed in independent shelters, group homes, or foster care centers across the country while their legal status is determined. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services rules on asylum cases, and the Justice Department rules on other immigration cases. Children can be placed with a sponsor, such as a parent or other guardian, while their court cases continue. And from there, you have three routes. The child loses their case and is deported by ICE to their country of origin. The child becomes a legal adult and is released or detained in adult facilities while court proceedings continue. That is an interesting thing, implying that a child can just grow up while this whole thing is happening. The child wins asylum or immigration relief and can legally stay in the United States. That's the best case scenario. Ultimately, ORR seeks to release children to sponsors, preferably parents, whom the agency screens for criminal history and fitness to provide care. When case managers cannot find appropriate sponsors, ORR cares for the children until they turn 18. At that point, they can be released or transferred to adult facilities. Okay. Am I being ridiculous here to actually think that if a child is being sort of entered into a system of care, given a parent or whatever else, then at that point the child should just be made documented? Is that ridiculous of me to say? That if, for example, child gets a foster parent and is being raised by a foster parent, at that point their sort of status should be made legal? Is that not a isn't that actually pretty intuitively logical? I don't know. It just makes sense to me. Okay, minors remain blah 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 30 days. However, HHS has faced criticism for not tracking children after releasing them to sponsors, which it has said it has no authority to do. Many children end up working grueling and dangerous jobs in violation of child labor laws. How is their immigration status determined? Regardless of whether children are released to sponsors, their asylum and immigration cases continue, which is just weird to me. Unaccompanied children are typically screened for asylum eligibility, and unlike adults, they can make a claim even after being in the United States for a year. Children face formidable challenges to prove their cases, often without legal help. In the last quarter of 2018, U.S. Citizenship and Immigrant Services, part of the DHS, granted asylum to just over 28% of child applicants, though the agency gives certain unaccompanied minors other forms of legal relief, including special visas for survivors of human trafficking and parental abuse. Though the overall denial rate for asylum and other forms of relief had steadily climbed in the past 2 decades, it dropped from about 70% in fiscal year of 2020 down to 53% in 2022. Analysts point to several possible reasons, including an increase in the number of asylum seekers receiving legal representation. There you go. Oh, Well, isn't that interesting? Apprehensions of unaccompanied children along the US-Mexican border. Well, look at that. Open borders, I guess. Open borders, everybody. The borders have never been more open, I guess. While their asylum cases are pending, unaccompanied children must also navigate backlogged immigration courts overseen by the Department of Justice's Executive Office for Immigration Review. The DVPRA urges the government to ensure legal support for child migrants, but because immigration cases are civil proceedings, they are not guaranteed attorneys. In the fiscal year of 2022, ICE deported 220 unaccompanied children, or just 13% of the previous year's total. Other children voluntarily leave the country, receive asylum or other legal relief, or have their cases thrown out due to insufficient evidence of their unlawful status. Under Biden, overall deportations have risen. In the year 2022, there were more than 111,000 deportations, almost 3 times the amount from a year earlier. How did the Trump administration respond? Trump pursued hardline measures to deter asylum seekers, including expanding the number of spaces available in immigration detention and increasing family separations. Critics said these actions created unsafe conditions for unaccompanied children, but the administration argued that the surge of arrivals at the border overwhelmed the immigration system, and it blamed Congress for failing to increase funding for border security. Most notably, in April 2018, the Justice Department announced a new zero tolerance policy which directed authorities to detain and criminally prosecute all adults caught entering the United States without authorization, instead of releasing most of them to await an immigration court date. Minors by law cannot be held alongside guardians awaiting trials. As a result, officials separated more than 4,300 children from their families and recategorized them as unaccompanied between July 2017 and June 2018. Following public outcry, Trump issued an executive order to halt family separations, and a federal judge ordered the families to be reunited. However, separations which were carried out informally before the zero tolerance policy continued. Critics decried the overcrowding of migrant detention facilities during the Trump administration, alleging abuse and linking poor conditions to child deaths. At least 7 children died in immigration custody during Trump's presidency, following a decade without any such deaths. The CBP reportedly held children for weeks in violation of the DVPRA. Additionally, the administration tried to override floor settlement regulations and allow DHS to indefinitely detain families, which it argued would end the need to separate children from guardians. A federal judge blocked these efforts in 2019. The same year, the Trump administration created the Migrant Protection Protocols, also known as the Remain in Mexico program, which forced asylum seekers to wait in Mexico as their cases were processed in U.S. immigration courts. Although MPP guidelines stipulated that unaccompanied minors should not be sent back, over 16,000 migrants under the age of 18 were returned to Mexico before the Biden administration halted the program in February 2021. Trump's approach to detention policies reflected a broader push to reshape U.S. asylum policy. His administration cut deals with regional partners to inhibit asylum seekers from entering the United States, made obtaining asylum more difficult for child migrants, and ended the prioritization of unaccompanied children's cases in immigration courts, among other changes. Officials characterized some of these changes as central to fighting human smuggling, since migrants are often forced to pay exorbitant sums to abusive smugglers, and that's not just a US problem, by the way. And the administration implemented measures to prosecute anyone complicit in smuggling minors across the border. Critics countered that the policies unduly targeted parents who paid smugglers. What impact did the pandemic's arrival have? The Trump administration suspended asylum procedures for most border crossers, including unaccompanied children, and began swiftly removing them from the United States under Title 42, an emergency public health regulation that remains in effect. However, critics argue this gave rise to a so-called shadow immigration system. Before the removals, which watchdog groups said violated the TVPRA, hundreds of mostly unaccompanied children were detained in hostels, sometimes for weeks. In September 2020, a federal judge ruled that this practice violated the Flores settlement and ordered DHS to end it in most cases. A decision that was upheld by an appeals court. The same judge had ordered the release of migrant children detained alongside their parents in ICE custody, citing the pandemic, but later declared that order unenforceable. In November 2020, another federal judge barred the administration from rejecting unaccompanied minors under the public health order, though the administration later admitted it continued expulsions in violation of the ruling. Open borders, just a reminder, we are dealing with an open borders season under the Leninist Party president. What has been the Biden administration's approach? Biden has taken several steps to roll back Trump-era policies. However, a growing influx of migrants crossing the border has challenged his administration and prompted criticism from Democrats and Republicans. In January 2021, Biden created a task force to reunite hundreds of still separated children with their parents, and his Justice Department officially rescinded the zero tolerance policy. As of February 2023, some 600 children have been reunited with their families, but about 1,000 remain separated. Officials also reinstated the Central American Minors program, which allows certain children from Northern Triangle countries to gain refugee status or temporary legal residence. Before making the dangerous journey to the US-Mexico border, Trump had discontinued scam in 2017. In June 2022, more than a year after the administration first attempted to end the Remain in Mexico program, the Supreme Court ruled that US officials had the authority to end the controversial policy. However, a Texas federal judge blocked the ruling in December, and administration efforts to end the program continue. Though Biden has relied on the Title 42, which has been responsible for more than 2.6 million deportations, to manage the growing crisis at the border, his administration has largely held off on using it to resume expelling unaccompanied minors. The resulting influx of unaccompanied children has at times overwhelmed ORR and caused many of these minors to be housed in overcrowded CBP facilities, sometimes for far longer than the 3-day limit. With Title 42 set to end in May 2023, the administration's fears of an additional border surge have led to the announcement of restrictive new asylum policy that will allow the government to deny asylum to migrants who did not previously applied in a third country. Some reporting also indicates the administration is considering reinstating a controversial practice that allows U.S. authorities to detain migrant families who cross the border illegally. Meanwhile, officials have sought to speed up the releases of unaccompanied children to sponsors. Still, the number of children entering HHS custody far outpaces the number of being released from its care. This is a very long article. What did earlier administrations do? Detention has played a persistent role in U.S. immigration policy, dating back to legislation in the 1890s that standardized practices for detaining migrants for medical and admissibility screenings. President Ronald Reagan reinvigorated the practice in the 1980s amid a surge in refugees from Central America and the Caribbean. Officials began detaining all migrants, many in private prisons, and opened the first facility for infants and children. Reagan's policies faced legal challenges, including the lawsuit that was ultimately resolved by the Flores settlement. In the early 1990s, under President George H.W. Bush, authorities intercepted thousands of Haitian refugees and indefinitely detained them in makeshift facilities at the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Abuse and forced repatriation of unaccompanied Haitian minors at the facility became a political flashpoint under President Bill Clinton, who eventually allowed many of the children to enter the United States. Clinton also fortified the U.S.-Mexico border, constructing a fence and equipping an expanded CBP force with surveillance technologies. President George W. Bush later vowed to prosecute anyone, including first-time offenders, caught crossing the border illegally. Unlike Trump's zero-tolerance approach, this policy did not result in the mass separation of children and parents. However, the Bush administration did separate some families and detain others pending resolution of their cases. Additionally, Bush signed legislation including the TVPRA that defined protections for unaccompanied minors. Until the Barack Obama administration, however, total numbers of unaccompanied children arriving at the southern border were relatively low in 2014. Obama responded to a spike in unaccompanied minors by promising to send back the children and coordinating with Central American governments to deter would-be migrants. His administration also funded legal support for unaccompanied minors and established CAM. Officials did not routinely separate families, though they expanded detention of children and parents in prison, like unsanitary facilities that critics say violated due process and floors. Obama's ORR also came under fire for mistakenly releasing some unaccompanied children into the custody of human traffickers. Well, that's... How do other countries deal with child migrants? I guess that's the last bit. Though the pandemic temporarily stifled global movement, experts say it has also increased the vulnerability of displaced and migrant children. Several UN agreements outline countries' responsibilities to child migrants, most notably the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This 1989 accord affirms that countries should not separate families and should detain children only as a measure of last resort, and for the shortest appropriate period of time. The United States is a signatory, but it is the only country worldwide that has not ratified the convention. Well, whoa, the US. What are you doing, the US? And is thus not legally bound by it. Interesting. United Nations holds that asylum-seeking children should also almost never be detained. However, some 330,000 migrant children across at least 77 countries were detained annually before the pandemic. That includes arrivals to Europe, which has struggled with a wave of immigration from the Middle East and North Africa that began in 2015. In 2022, more than 21,000 child migrants in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Greece, Italy, and Serbia were unaccompanied or separated from guardians. The European Union's asylum law, known as the Dublin Regulation, requires member states to accept responsibility for unaccompanied children who have family members living or seeking asylum in those countries. However, detention of migrant families is rampant in the EU. More than 18,000 unaccompanied child migrants vanished in Europe between January 2018 and December 2020. One investigation found Australia has likewise faced controversy over its mandatory indefinite detention of unauthorized migrants. While there are now no children being held in immigration detention facilities on the mainland, compared to peak of about 2,000 in 2013, some refugees and asylum seekers continue to be held offshore. Critics say Australia's lack of legal limit on how long minors can be held has led some child refugees to languish in custody for years. Denmark created a similar policy for processing asylum seekers offshore in 2021, and the United Kingdom is considering such an approach. Yes, I remember the debate about it. Meanwhile, Canadian law allows the detention of migrant children only as a last resort. There were only 2 minors held through the Canada Border Service Agency during the first 4 months of 2022. Both were housed alongside a parent or guardian rather than detained independently. However, experts have previously raised concerns about children held with their parents in prison-like facilities without legal recourse. Under pressure from the United States, Mexico has escalated migrant apprehensions in recent years. In 2021, Mexican authorities apprehended nearly 308,000 migrants, the highest number ever recorded. That excludes child migrants, after the government declared in 2020 that children would be prohibited from being placed in immigration detention. Today, unaccompanied minors apprehended in Mexico en route to the United States face almost certain deportation. There we have it. There we have it. The reason for all that long reading is to demonstrate that, well, open borders under Biden and under the Democrats. I mean the Leninists. Amazing. So amazing. Good stuff. Well done. Okay, let's go back to the thing that we were watching, the debate. So we have now learned that under the Leninist law, borders are open. It's like it's like an open buffet for immigrants to just enter and, do whatever they like.
Alien. You can't say alien and you can't say illegal.
But have you considered that you cannot even say illegal alien anymore? You have to say undocumented migrant? Holy crap. What world are we living in when you can't even say that? Even though the article is that we just read actually used the term alien, but whatever. That doesn't count. What are you talking about, Greater Ain't? Biden is a Leninist. Of course he was pro open borders. What do you mean? Dennis Prager said so. Were you not paying attention?
Legal. You now say undocumented immigrant.
Oh no, how woke.
The very fact that they have changed the language is proof that they are for it.
What? That makes no sense. I'm sorry. What I've just heard makes absolutely zero sense. Zero. They've changed the language, therefore they're for it. That makes no sense. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Undocumented is basically the same as saying illegal. I'm sorry to burst your bubble.
Okay.
Dennis.
Let's briefly talk about Project 2025 as we don't have unlimited time. Stephen, I'll go first to you. Project 2025 fears that we're hearing about from the left media ecosystem right now, well-founded fears or overblown or hyperbolic?
Overblown. Who doesn't want to get rid of the Ministry of Education a little bit?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't really focus much on policy for conservatives because I don't think conservatives have or run on policy anymore. I think that all of the fears around Donald Trump have to do with his disdain for the constitutional democratic republic that we have and his desire to usurp as much power into his sole position as president as possible. And that's what I focus on. I know that I've seen people talk about Project 2025 and people have fears of Project 2025.
I mean, isn't Project 2025 sort of a tool for him to do that? Isn't that basically just an instrument through which Trump would do that?
But conservatives know nothing about policy and they don't even care to run on policy anymore. So I just personally don't focus much on the particular aspects of that platform, although I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump and his administration wanted to push a lot, given some of the quotes that have come out, I think from Donald Trump in the past, and I think J.D. Vance about it, and the association with like the Heritage Foundation, everything
J.D. Vance.
else, but it's not a thing that I particularly focus on.
And to be clear, Stephen, you don't focus on it because you don't genuinely think Trump knows anything about it or cares about policy, or because you think it's unlikely to be implemented?
I don't know what the final versions of it would look like when it comes to implementation. I don't know if Republicans will have the necessary majorities in the House or Senate to pass it. My concern is far more singularly with Donald Trump as the head executive than it is with any particular policy platform, because Donald Trump is just not a very effective leader. He's not a good politician. When they were in office, they couldn't pass any policy. They couldn't actually get any legislation passed. So I'm not as concerned about a policy platform as I am about what Donald Trump wants to do as the president or as the executive.
Dennis, what about you? What are your thoughts on the discussion that's been growing, certainly in the last few weeks?
We largely agree. 2025 is irrelevant to the Trump administration, and he has said so. No, I don't know anyone who's read it. It's 800 pages. I haven't read it. Stephen presumably has not read it. It's
more than 100 pages. It's like 900 pages.
The Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. Stephen, so. No, I don't know anyone who's read it. It's 800 pages. I haven't
800 pages. I heard it was 900 pages, but whatever.
Haven't read it. Stephen presumably has not read it. It's the Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. There are left-wing think tanks, liberal think tanks, conservative think tanks, right-wing think tanks, and they're all permitted to put out whatever they want. Am I permitted? And I'm not being cute. If I'm not, I'm not. But can I?
What? You're not.
Can I ask Stephen a question?
Please.
Okay. Yeah. So, Stephen, how do you stand on men who say they're women competing in women's sports?
Oh, my God. Really? For fuck's sake. Really? Oh, my God. Well, that came out of nowhere. What the? Really?
Stand on men who say they're
Please.
Stephen, you say that we should be worried about what Trump will do to our democracy. But have you considered trans women in sports? Have you considered that, Stephen? Answer me, Stephen. Answer me. Answer me. No, I'm sorry. Even if Destiny has bad takes on this, if he has any sense, he will shut it down immediately by saying that this is inconsequential in compared to what he's actually talking about. That is the route that he should be taking. He should say, this is irrelevant. This is so inconsequential. I'm talking about undermining democracy itself, and you're whining about women in sports. This is such a what? Where did that even come from? What happened? How did we get here? How did we arrive at women, trans women in sports? What happened?
okay. So, Stephen, how do you stand on men who say they're women competing in women's sports?
What the?
I'm assuming the question has to do with trans people competing in sports. I think that my personal view is that sports up through probably high school are just there for people to kind of like play games and get along with each other and, you know, like build camaraderie and stuff. So I don't really have much of a concern past or up to that point. Once you get to NCAA or professional events, I think that the dividing between the sexes
Oh no.
is very important for athletic competition. So I'm generally opposed to
Is that a non sequitur?
trans people participating in the gender they identify
So you
with.
know
like,
then that the Biden administration has extended the anti-discrimination legislation passed to protect women. They have extended it to trans people. You are aware of that?
that they've done what?
They have
That it didn't what?
extended it to trans people so that
Wait, extended what to trans people? I'm sorry.
you cannot discriminate against trans people. If a man says he is a woman in college, he should be allowed to play in college sport. That is the Biden administration's position.
I'm not aware of that right now. I thought it went
Okay,
the
fair
opposite.
enough.
My
Okay, so
understanding,
people
just to be
can
clear,
check
my
on
understanding
that.
is that right
Okay.
now they
All
can't.
right. So what is your position? Since I think the whole left stinks, you think Donald Trump stinks.
Literally. That Destiny is saying, oh, Trump will, in my opinion, undermine democracy. And Dennis Prager's retort is, but have you considered trans people are icky and play sports? Wow. Incredible.
So I talk about the left. So let's go to Gavin Newsom. In California, where I live, there is a law. It is a law. It's not a recommendation that if a kid, an 8-year-old,
More trans issues? Really? More trans? You know what? If based on Dennis Prager's rhetoric, you would think that in the US, trans people constitute like 67% of the population or something. Like the trans people are like some sort of a majority in the country. What's happening? Why are we here? Why is this being talked about?
says that she is a boy, and the school is not permitted to tell the parents that the girl thinks she is a boy and goes by a boy's name in her school.
What the fuck? Why are we this? Why? Why this?
Do you think that that is a moral and good law?
I don't think about this. I'm so sorry, but
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Destiny. Thank you. Thank you for actually, I hope, going in the direction of why are we even talking about this right now? Why are we here? democracies at stake, and you're crying about uh, children being able to go by their preferred pronouns in school without being ratted out to their parents.
When I look at Donald Trump, this is a man who tried to overthrow the election and resist the peaceful transfer of power. I can't think of a thing that I think less
There we
about
go.
than how
Okay,
where
so it's
trans
all
people
right.
stand. Just to be
It's
clear,
all
hold on. Just to be
Trump.
clear for
It's
people.
Thank you. God, thank you. Thank you. Finally we get some sense or whatever. What is happening here? What is even happening?
People that don't know, just to be clear, for people that don't know my background.
You
okay,
guys
hold
on the left should thank God
Yeah.
every day for
Hold
Donald
on. Well, wait,
Trump. You
Dennis.
should say,
If
even if you're an
Stephen, hold on.
You're an atheist. Atheist.
Hold on. If Stephen doesn't want to answer the question as you see it, allow him not to answer it.
Sure.
But let's
Or
hear
I'll
what
answer
he's
it.
going to say.
I'll answer it.
Okay, so fine, that's fine.
I was banned from Twitch for opposing the integration of trans people into sports. I don't think it's appropriate. I probably stand in
I didn't
opposition
ask
to a
that
lot of the
question.
very,
I
very
asked-
far left.
okay.
What?
The law. Okay, so let me just go on record. I can give you the rest. We could talk hours.
Sure. What's the California law for the 8-year-old? Go ahead. What was it?
Yes, you cannot, a school cannot tell a parent, not doesn't have to, is not allowed to tell a parent if a child
That is the perfect response for the threat to democracy that Donald Trump poses. Perfect.
identifies as the other sex in a California school.
That would probably be something I'd be opposed to as a parent. I think I would want to know that if my kid was identifying as a different gender
Yes,
in class.
Correct. So you
Okay.
see, if it weren't for Trump, you would have to spend.
I'm sorry, I would just cut this short. I would just cut this conversation short. I'd not entertain even a trans topic debate during this whole whatever this is. Ridiculous.
Time with me or anyone else defending the left and their scummy little laws like that ruin lives of kids and have girls get their breasts cut off at 18 or even younger. What is being? It's like no.
Since when is an 18-year-old a kid?
Nothing matters. All that matters is January 6th. Every time I raise an issue, we go back to
This is where it matters that Destiny's not even left wing.
January 6th.
Because it was he tried to rebel. It was a rebellion.
We go back to January. Matters. All that matters is January 6th.
Yeah, it sort of does. Yeah. January 6th sort of does matter. Yeah.
Every time I raise an issue, we go back to January 6th.
He essentially agrees with many important right-wing positions. I'm going to be honest. If I were debating Prager, I wouldn't even entertain this. I would just say, this is irrelevant. This is so irrelevant. This is so not worth discussing right now in the face of the threats that are, because in a democracy, I guess I would just say that in a democracy, this topic can be discussed. And once democracy is over, the discussion is over. So this is so just irrelevant that, yeah, he does agree with Prager, but that's neither here nor there, sort of. That is why he is entertaining it. I definitely wouldn't.
6th.
Because it was he tried to rebel. It was a rebellion against the peaceful transfer of power.
For him, is more important, this argument, than the other issue. Yeah, it's silly.
People to go peacefully to the halls of Congress.
He told Mike Pence, why were they going there? What were they going there for?
To protest the results of the election.
Exactly.
Because they thought it was cheating. You're right.
Exactly.
You're
it was an
allowed to
insurrection. They
protest.
thought, no, you're not allowed to protest
you're not
with
allowed
violence.
to overthrow, but you were allowed to protest.
When they were going there to support Mike Pence, what did they want Mike Pence to do?
Yes, they wanted Mike Pence not to accept certain electors from certain states.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's right.
Correct.
Okay, but okay.
Which was against the ECA, right? That was illegal under the Electoral Count Act, right?
But I don't agree with that, and that's that.
That's fine. I don't agree with insurrectionists either, but you understand the ridiculousness of wanting to have a man who's now usurped criminal immunity as the president. So a lot of the illegal actions that he took, remember, Roberts in his opinion said explicitly that when Donald Trump told his acting and his deputy attorney general, can you guys write fake notes to the state legislatures to say that we found evidence of voter fraud that wasn't there? We can't even criminally review that anymore, right? So a man who's now criminally immune, who tried to overthrow the government, yeah, that's going to stand out more in my mind, even if they failed at it, than whether or not 8-year-olds in California, their teachers tell their parents if they're trans or whatever. I didn't say it doesn't matter, but some things matter more than other things.
Okay, I can sort of semi-accept that. He sort of almost did what I wanted him to do. Almost did what I wanted him to do.
Right. In the day, you're right. It matters
less
what happened on January 6th. January 6th is wildly overblown. It wasn't an insurrection, not a single person has been arrested or indicted on insurrection. Donald Trump was not accused of fomenting insurrection. The term is a left.
Bounce back and retook control of the conversation. He should have just shut it down. He should not have even
wing lie about what happened on January 6th. I don't like January 6th. I condemned it when it happened. It was not an insurrection. That the language that the left uses, fascist, Nazi, insurrection, misinformation, disinformation.
The language of the left, misinformation.
This is the language of division that you denied the left engagement.
Saying something is misinformation is the language of the left.
First of all, I've never denied that the left engages in divisiveness. Of course they do. I'm just saying that Joe Biden himself doesn't, which is evident enough by how much joint legislation he's passed. This guy's got 40 years, in government. Of course, this guy, has relationships with people, isn't as divisive as he seems. And I think that's evidenced by what he can pass. To say that the insurrection is the language of leftists, this is the language that came to us in the 14th Amendment after the Reformation, when, surprise, surprise, after the Civil War, people in Congress didn't want leadership again. That was part of the Civil War. That shouldn't be that shocking. There's nothing left-wing about that idea. That should be a very American idea. We don't want people that would try to insurrect the government to fight against it. Also, if we want to talk about health issues, we're welcome to talk about it as well. But I care way less about the leftists have some crazy views on 8-year-olds being trans, which I think is really stupid, by the way. And I agree that that's stupid. But I care way more about the fact that I don't know if we're ever going to have a new vaccine in this country that is going to have mass protests against it now, because conservatives become the party of anti-vax. I think that's a far more pressing public health matter than trans kids.
Yes. Because the CDC is in cahoots with Big Pharma and lied to the American
conspiratorial at all either.
People about masks, about distance, and about lockdowns, and ruined a whole generation's lives because of the lie that lockdowns were necessary for kids. Sweden didn't lock down one day for kids, not one kid died. That you defend.
The point of sort of having children isolated as well was not out of fear that kids will die. From the beginning was known that children were far more resilient to the thing. The fear was that those kids will then meet with much older relatives and put those much older relatives in danger. That's been the sort of fear from the get-go when it comes to these things. Like, that's okay. That is that.
The CDC, the NIH, and the Democrats, and I mean, for that matter, any Republicans who supported lockdowns, it will not be something you will be proud of when you look back at your career.
Yeah, and the entire world was all in cahoots for all the people. You point out Sweden.
The entirety of the globe was in cahoots. True. Because the entire world is now controlled by the left. Didn't you know?
Sweden's death rates to every other European country, even the other Scandinavian countries that did enact lockdowns, and more people died in Sweden.
I have compared them.
Okay, then you know that Sweden fared about the worst of any of those countries.
Only if you compare them to Scandinavia. And Finland has announced that it would do exactly what Sweden did if it ever happened again. They were wrong in locking down their students. If you're on the record as defending nearly 2 years of lockdowns of students, and
how did this come to?
20 kids died at age 9 or less.
Just lockdown of students. The lockdowns affected more than just the students, right?
Lockdown of students.
Okay, because you said that like 3 times.
Egregious because kids were hurt more than adults were because of the lockdown. That's why I'm noting kids.
What? Okay.
Sure.
And because it was particularly irrelevant because kids were not dying of COVID, whereas old people were.
Sure, but the issue was that teachers tend to be older people and they were the ones that were worried.
Yes.
Whether
Right.
or not the lockdowns
no
were
teacher died in Sweden. Just
whether or not the lockdowns were
no
good or
teacher
bad.
died in Sweden.
Yeah.
The lockdowns were despicable. Despicable.
Whether or
And
not
right.
that is the reason that people
Almost 12, 10 to 19 years old. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for those starts. Thank you for the stats. Appreciate it.
people are very, very suspicious and should be. I was never. If so, my brother is a professor of medicine. I trusted doctors like I trusted my own parents. I trusted the medical community. I don't any longer. They've lost my trust.
Yep. Now you
Like
trust
AMA
Joe
that
Rogan
has
and Donald
no-
Trump. Yeah. Now we trust
True.
podcasters who have every vested interest in lying to you about things in order to make more ad revenue and to sell you more products for whatever
I see.
vitamin
So-
boost or whatever.
oh, okay. All right.
If you want to talk about lockdowns and them being good or bad, I think at this point, I think the evidence is out that the lockdowns were probably too aggressive. I think most people agree with that. The issue isn't debating whether or not they were good or bad. It's that you conservatives assume that they were done maliciously. The entire world came together to
It's
maliciously
irrelevant if
lock.
it was
It's not
malicious.
irrelevant.
Hey, you know what?
the
I don't give a
motivation
damn
for
if it was
why you
malicious. I don't give a damn if it was malicious. It ruined societies. It ruined children's lives.
Okay, it did not ruin societies. Societies survived, I'm sorry to say.
The New
You don't
York
think the
Times
intention of a
itself-
policy matters when it comes to trusting them in the future? You don't think knowing if they were acting maliciously or not isn't important in deciding if you would trust them
it
for
is not.
future?
No, and by the way, well, I will say this with regard to the vaccines and the fact that they were not tested and they were unleashed upon people, and that they told children, they still told little babies should get these vaccines when babies aren't dying of COVID. I think there was an element of
Well, they tested as much as they could considering the time restraints. Let me put it this way: if my father had gotten the vaccine, it probably would have been a lot bigger chance that he would have been still alive. So, I don't know. It is pretty proven that the vaccine lessens the symptoms by quite a big margin.
maliciousness, not in the
The
sense
same.
of we want to hurt people, but we want to have the
Thank you for the $10. Me, Dono, will Dono more around payday. Thank you. Best streamer. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
profits that big pharma enables us to have, because big pharma, let me ask you, do you think big pharma has only the interest of the public in mind?
I'm a liberal capitalist. I think that big pharma has the interest of making money. The
That's
goal
correct.
is the
Okay,
FDA and the
fine.
government to
Right.
regulate, to make sure that they're adhering to what they're supposed
That's
to
right,
do.
but they
Now, if
didn't-
you want to
but they
take the
didn't
position, if you want to
regulate.
take the position that every corporation around the world that would have had plenty of investment in calling this out, by the way, why didn't J&J say that the mRNA vaccines were rigged? If you want to say that every academic institution across the
True.
entire world, especially in other countries, weren't calling out the horribleness of the mRNA vaccines, and if you want to make the argument that every country in the world, even those that didn't utilize our vaccines, like China, Russia, Iran, and Qatar, they would have every incentive to say, by the way, those mRNA vaccines are killing Americans. It's strange that all of these people seem to be silent on this issue, but thank God we've got Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to tell us about how
True.
corrupt, and Brett Weinstein to tell us how corrupt, I guess, big pharma is. I thought that conservatives used to be proud of large American businesses. This was
You're
an
right, I
operation
was.
under warp
You're
speed from
100%
Donald Trump,
right.
a Donald Trump warp speed, a globalist
guilty.
capitalist
I-
thing
I-
that
I-
Americans should be proud of, but we can't even take pride in it because you're so conspiracy brained on it now.
Uh-oh.
The issue is not conspiracy brained, and sometimes there really are. Look, I will admit to you, I defended the big pharma nearly all of my broadcast career. I have been awakened to the corruption that is now involved. I am sorry to say.
I think you've been awakened to something
I
called
never
audience
took-
capture. I think
never took
audience
Robert
capture is what we
F-
awakened to.
I never took Robert Kennedy seriously on the issue of vaccines and kids, and now I do. I admit it. I have been chastened by the
Yeah.
facts.
The
All
guy
right,
that says
gentlemen,
the polio
listen,
vaccine
I
has
know
killed
that
more
we
people
could
than it's
go-
saved. Yeah. Okay.
we
Sorry.
could go endlessly on.
We're not gonna go through the whole article, but I am going to link it and I'm gonna read it later off stream because this is interesting. How do I log in? Oh God, I hate this so much. There you go. Now I could link in.
On vaccines, but we have come to the end of our time. The last thing I want to ask you, and it really should be just a one word.
Oh, it's almost over. Interesting.
Dennis, you first. Who do you expect to be the winner of the November election?
So I feel bad in not giving you a yes or no or a one person answer.
Trump or Harris?
I never answer predictive questions.
Okay.
I'm only interested in what I think we need to do. And the thought of 4 more years of the left governing the country frightens me in terms of liberty. So,
all right. But you're not making a prediction. Stephen, who do you expect to see the win in November?
I'm feeling good on Harris right now.
Feeling good on Harris. Gentlemen, we haven't quite said it all, but we've said a lot of it. Dennis Prager, Stephen Kenneth Destiny Bennell II, thanks to both of you for joining me today.
Good to be with you again, David.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we've watched that. It was a pretty interesting thing. We've discussed open borders a bit. We've discussed, Zoshilix is white. You should not be white, Zoshilix. So I guess we're guys just gonna, today's stream is gonna be a bit shorter, I guess. We're gonna be playing a bit of a game. And after we play a bit of a game, I'm gonna